Welcome to Date with an Artist. This morning we have Sunny Pfalzer and Jojo Gronostay, and they're going to share with us some thoughts and images and videos from their practice. They're going to talk about their individual practices in the beginning, and then talk about what and why they decided to do together for this meeting. And then we will screen their video, which they made especially for today. So I pass the microphone to you, Jojo.
Thank you very much, Maayan. I'm going to start sharing a bit of my practice and let me see, share the screen here. Also to show why we choose to take part in this together. Do you see the whole screen now? Do you see like individual
Uh,
slides or the whole?
no,
The
we
whole
see
thing.
the whole thing.
Let me see. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Perfect. So maybe it's the best way to start with this work, which is an art project, but it's also a clothing label. And the name of the project and label is Dead White Man's Clothes. And I started it in 2017 and went to Ghana and made a clothing collection out of all these used items that get there from all around the world, and brought them back into the Western context. Yeah, to ask questions about power structures, also about value. Mostly, I showed the work in the art context, but also a bit in the fashion context. Um, and Yeah, it's also very much about collaboration, I would say, the whole project. I'm always collaborating with different kind of people, and I see it as a kind of platform as well. So here you can see some pictures of it. For instance. And yeah, I think my own identity has also a lot to do with the project. So my dad is Ghanaian, my mother is German. And I always felt a bit disconnected to this West African lifestyle because I didn't grow up with my dad. But also through this project, I got to know my Ghanaian family a lot better, and also the culture a lot better. So for me, it was also, I think, somehow a search for my own identity a bit. So this is at Hubert Winter um, um, exhibition I had there in Vienna, and yeah, so which is also maybe interesting to talk about that the work somehow shifts between the street, between the gallery space, museum space, and is somehow floating through all these different spaces. Um, this is the Cantamanto market, this big market in Accra, where I started the project and where I selected all these items. So so Charles. So yeah, and what I'm especially interested in is these maybe yeah, it's changing of objects between contexts. These, for instance, is a photographic work that I did of found heels in also at Cantamanto, and what I thought was interesting about them was that they were sold individually, so not in pairs, which somehow yeah shifts the meaning of this object completely. So so I really liked, of course, the sculptural qualities of this object, but also yeah, these questions maybe about identity and what is this, and if the use value goes away. Here's some more photographs. I also used these heels in a performance with Anna Franceschini, Italian artist, and we used them as kind of yes, props, but also as we were talking about it somehow like prosthesis, like adding to the body, and I think it worked out really beautiful, and the performers interacted with them, and yeah, just show maybe the pictures. So, and also talking about the public space, because Sunny's work has also a lot to do with it. And maybe there's also a connection in this work. I used to live in Paris for 1 year. And a work that I did there was I was collecting all these tables that I found near Chateau Rouge, this African neighborhood. And these tables or these cardboard boxes are used as displays for the street vendors to sell fake designer goods. So I basically did the same as thought very much like in the tradition of Bert and Hilla Becher, of just documenting them like architecture in a way, and making typologies um, of these tables. So this was also at the exhibition. So there were these ones with these strings on the side, which which I put in order somehow. And here on the right side are these banana boxes that are also used as displays. You know. So okay, this was a very short, just a few words of mine, introduction of my work, and I will pass it over to Sunny.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Cool. Yeah, I'm also gonna show you some stuff. Yeah, share screen. Yeah, so you can see this, right? So yeah, I wanted to show this picture first. I'm doing also video and sculpture. And here you see like these costumes costumes I used in a performance, and they became like this sculpture. So maybe in reference to Jojo's work also, how these like secondhand clothes can become something else when displayed. But yeah, besides making video and sculpture, I make performances where I cuddle with groups of people in public spaces, or we dance in the street, or we also crawl through the street like cockroaches. And I chose those images because that was in Tel Aviv in 2019, and I thought maybe it's interesting, especially for the people who are there right now. Yeah, so I'm interested in moving together and creating these swarms. But yeah, how can we hold and empower each other in these constellations? And yeah, what's the individual's responsibility within a collective? I can tell you a little bit about like my research. Yeah, so does this work? No, that's okay. um Damn it.
I know what it is.
Yes. Anyway, now you cannot see it.
But
Sorry.
maybe just tell about it.
Yeah,
like
I
if
just
it's not-
talk about it. So this image that you saw is the Chilean collective Las Tesis, and they were protesting against feminicidios in 2019. And what I'm interested in is that these actions, requires this physical presence on the street, and also by observing these like different forms of activism. I'm interested in like different techniques that create empowerment. So for example, in the Chilean example that we didn't see now, but that maybe some of you know.
I posted it in the chat for later for those who are interested.
Yes. So for example, doing the same movement together, we create a form of embodiment together, and we create collectivity and can empower each other. So same movement can be, for example, marching together, or as in this example, it was like a specific choreography, or also choirs, chants, and so on. They also use costume, like in the Chilean example, it was this headbands, but now we see an image like more historical about the suffragettes, where they use like the same kind of clothes to create an image and create attention. And there are countless examples of political groups who use these performative strategies. The suffragettes we see here already, then Black Panthers. Or more contemporary, we have Pussy Riot or the Zapatista movement, Mexican movement. So these last two groups, they're using masks as a tool, and hiding one's face can put the focus more on the issue and rather not on the personality. So I found particularly interesting with these tools and these groups that we do not only find these characteristics in activism, but also when we look at the military or Christianity, or when we look at cheerleaders. So a broad spectrum, like a lot of groups from a broad spectrum of ideologies use the same techniques to create this collective embodiment. And I see that, becoming a swarm can be very empowering, but taking away the individual's responsibility can also enable very harmful dynamics. So I'm interested in my work, how can we extract like these modes of empowerment and like the things that kind of can create collectivity from these tools, but at the same time being aware of the responsibility that we also have. So from more something personal, I was involved in this group. It's called Burschenschaftshysteria. It's an Austrian like anti-fascist feminist group that appropriates aesthetics of the far right in order to gain attention and then fill it with their own content or their traditions. And also to make like public marches and interfere in meetings of the far right. Sure, that was exciting, but at some point it felt very rigid. And also as a dancer, I want to be more experimental with my body and not only appropriate like these certain body postures. And I decided, so I decided a more playful approach that, maybe I show a bit of video thingies. Yeah, I decided a more playful approach that is also sensitive and involves the whole body, that is inclusive and intersectional. So I started these temporary collectives to organize research labs, workshops, performances, where groups go into the public space and deal with certain topics that are important for the people in those groups. And also react, for example, here, that's a sculpture in Tel Aviv, and it's called Two Forms. So in that score, we did, we were trying to go a bit away from this duality and go to plurality. So the score was basically like, how can we create a plurality in that sense? And yeah, I'm very interested always into being a glitch rather than staying in one spot. So there's, the accidental audience that can witness what's happening. But yeah, we always then, we continue, we move, and the roles are not fixed. So yeah, it's not like in a stage work where it's like audience and performers, but it's always switching, and sometimes we watch the people and sometimes the people watch us. Yeah, so maybe also let's check another video. This was in Berlin in 2020. So I still kept the mask as a tool, and when you wear a mask, you can move more freely. In the end, I think in the end, the decision to use masks came more from the somatic experience rather from the representational. But of course, there are also references that I also enjoy, like hooliganism or action heroes or Lee Bowery. So yeah. So I am interested in using activist tools, but to create something more multi-layered that speaks about political issues more in a poetic way and is at the same time self-reflective about its participants. And in this work, I mean, I'm particularly also interested in the monuments in public space, and in this work it refers a bit to like vandalizing monuments and creating also like participating in the public in terms of criticizing what like certain monuments by vandalizing them. But I'm yeah I like also this intersection of romance and vandalism. So here I try to like do something like use this like spray can, but do it in this very like slow movement, kind of sensually spraying each other. um yeah mm, yeah, so I think overall, also in general, I'm interested in how we move in public space and yeah, what kind of body postures are we taking, and what kind of body postures do maybe we want to take to act more sensitive. Okay, thank you. Actually, I need to keep the screen share. Are there any like comments so far, or should I just continue with the project we did with Jojo? Okay. So now I'm gonna show you the project that Jojo and I did together. And yeah, I'm just gonna show you and then we can talk about it.
Das ist eine Performance. Das ist eine Performance.
Nee, das ist keine Performance. Lassen Sie es einfach in Ruhe.
It's actually the first time that I'm seeing it as well, and I really love it. And I have so much to ask, but I have to concentrate now because there's not enough time. Um, but I think there's two main things, like two main directions that I would like us to talk about. Maybe I'll just like say both of them, and then you just jump on whatever you feel like talking about. So the first thing is like it made me think also in relation to what you showed before about what you showed about the anti-fascist like mirroring and like your presentation. Um, and then the way that you said you diverted from it and like seeing this work, it made me think about what Oliver Marchart writes about. I don't know if you all know him. He's an Austrian theoretician, and he wrote a book recently called Conflictual Aesthetics, and he speaks about the fact that if we want to do something political, then it has to be some sort of minoritarian propaganda. And the way that he defines it is something that is, I'm simplifying, of course, but he has like three main principles. One is that it's collective or collectivized. Two, that it's organized. And three, that it creates an interruption in the everyday life or in the everyday movement, and thus creates a conflict, which is on one hand organized, but on the other hand unpredictable. So it's kind of like a contradiction, contradicting itself, which he also writes about. Um, and he also speaks about some sort of pre-enactment of a political happening. So the artistic performance becomes a pre-enactment of a political situation that hasn't happened yet. And when I saw your work, it really made me think about this because it's collectivized, it's organized, and it's creating an interruption in the everyday routine of the people in the mall. But it's also really um, I think it's really smart in the sense, and this brings me to the other thing that I want to talk about, but it's all connected, that it uses social media cliches and like pop video clip hints. And, you know, a lot of like you use this pop culture, but then you kind of subvert it in a way that it's a bit antagonistic. So it creates like tiny provocations and fractions with people, but it's also it's done so in a very humorous and loving way. And I think this also is something that connects both of your practices, that it has an antagonistic aspect in it, which is also the in many senses the political aspect, but it does so in a way that is cuddling, if to use Sunny's term. So maybe this is something that you might want to talk about, or one of like these things.
Would you like to start?
No, you can start, Jojo. I was much before.
Yes, actually, we talked about a pop music video in the beginning, and also had this a bit in our mind because, of course, there's also this big history of music videos that were made in malls, and also you have these kind of fashion shows that are made in malls, and modeling contests, and so this was something we were speaking about also very briefly. And yeah, but there were a lot of things that interested us both in the mall, at doing it in the mall, and also this idea of the non-place, so to say, that you have these, that they don't have a very significant architectural, yeah, it's very universal. Everywhere around the world is very universal, and it doesn't have its own history in a way. And so I think this was really interesting. And still, depending on the different countries, a mall is perceived very differently. So I think if you go to a mall in Ghana, for instance, um, it's yes, perceived very, very differently. So I would say it's more a place for the rich people, and I guess it has something to do with the climate as well, because the climate is neutralized in a way. So it's more comfortable in the global south maybe than here in Austria or Germany. but this was also an aspect of it, that we have this mall, which is in some way, yeah, universal. That it was interesting to try this out in this space.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this aspect of the mall appearing as something public, but it's actually private. And also this, I think it was very interesting because when I perform in public space, I don't feel afraid to like move as I move. But in the mall, it felt so, yeah, like really disrupting something here. And I felt like in every point, I felt like, oh my God, they're gonna throw me out now. But on the other hand, it has this aspect, yeah, which I found very interesting, that it also has this aspect of surveillance that is in one hand very threatening, but on the other hand also like protective. That maybe in the street, if I do something that appears like crazy, that maybe a person could come over and actually like interfere with me in an aggressive way. But in the mall, I'm, so to say, surveillance and I'm protected. So I found this quite interesting. And then also I mean, as a teenager, maybe I spent some time in malls, then I was like completely like against it and like, wow, this is so bad and capitalism and blah, blah, blah. And then while living in Mexico City for a year, I went to the mall because it felt like more calm than the street. And I went to the cine to watch Hollywood film. Or it felt like, yeah, a space that could be everywhere, and in that space also comforting in a weird way. So yeah, there are some strange feelings coming up.
Can you talk maybe a little bit about the fractions that you had with people there? Because there were a few moments that you could see that people were a bit. I mean, that woman that told you leave them alone. I mean, what was she?
Yeah.
What was she on about?
I mean, that was. I mean, like how she interpreted this. I mean, she was thinking that I am like, yeah, I'm
In distress or?
yeah, that I'm like a crazy person, that Jojo is filming me and like exploiting the crazy person. So it was actually very cool that she interfered, because this is how it can look from the outside, and I think it's great that she did that. What I didn't put in the video now because we didn't had a good angle from this, but also I had to like turn around and tell her like, hey, this is my friend, it's fine. So then she was like, okay, then she left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like in the sense of also what you said before, this, Foucault's heterotopias, that in the mall you're on one hand surveillance, so you're afraid that you're going to be policed, but on the other hand, there's also a sense of like that this order is also some sort of protection, and so in that sense, it's also interesting that she thought of you of this crazy person in this crazy house of the mall.
Yeah, and also what I felt, I feel very uncomfortable in front of the camera, I have to say. So, and I, from the beginning, I thought this was kind of a bit of a different structure of power relations, because of course I was the one having the camera, but the whole time I was thinking about, okay, probably I'm also watched now. There was the security guy that came at one point, so I knew somehow there's somebody else also watching, and that's also what I thought about the whole time. It looks like I'm somehow, yeah, like I'm taking something from a person who's just going, like, yeah, is going a bit crazy. So
Yeah.
so this was an interesting situation as well. These power dynamics that were a bit different, just in the more than a public space, I would say.
Yeah. And also, there on one hand, there are the moments that, that it's really like communicating with the way that we all act in social networks, or with like a normal, like, quote to quote behavior. For example, I'm stretching, or, taking a picture of your butt, and, things like that. But then on the other hand, it's interesting that the places that become a proper performance or dance or choreography are probably the places that make people think that you're crazy, which is interesting, because maybe we're the crazy ones, like we're taking pictures of our butts for the social networks, and not necessarily the more elaborate choreography, or, crawling like cockroaches, which is something I often want to do but never actually done. Martin, yes, please. Whoever wants to ask something, feel free.
Yeah, hi. Was this in Wien Mitte, in Vienna, the place? No, because it looked so similar to Wien Mitte. That's fascinating. Because there's a similar place, actually, mall in Wien Mitte, and there was once, a few years ago, the department and the class of social design of the University of Applied Arts Vienna. And that was fascinating for me because I did there a lecture, and then I had to go into the shopping mall, which looked very similar, then go up, and I think in the second or in the third floor, then I had to walk, as there were all the shops beside me, and then I walked into an office, and there was actually the class. So there was a kind of preoccupation and because I was thinking about the performance, I liked it also very much, and I think actually what I really liked was this double performance, so to say, so that Jojo, you also were kind of performer, because also one saw you filming the event, and I found it really interesting that there was some that the one woman interrupted because she wanted to protect the performer, so to say, without knowing that it is a performance. So these are this kind of micro politics that pop up in such a performance, which I think are interesting. And I mean, there have been several performances. I also remember once I was at a symposia, and there was 10 years ago, and there was a presentation of a group. Unfortunately, I forgot their name, and they did a very nice collective performance in a shopping mall. Actually, they invited people to take part in a role game where they used the material for, I forgot the word, schminken, for, what is the word for it? Makeup, yeah. So you can take test makeup for free. So they invited all the people to take all the test makeup in this shop, and then cover their faces, and then do a game there, role game. So and actually then finally they got problems. But I think it's interesting to use these places, and how far can you go. So then I'm coming to my question, actually, my second one. So the one was, where is it? Which shopping mall? And the second question is, because I think you got no permission. Did you have a permission to do it? So when did they stop you, or did they never stop you there?
Yeah, I mean, we were very lucky with the security guy there. Of course, we didn't have a permission. I learned from past performances that whenever you ask for permission, they are aware, and they come and check what you're doing, and then maybe they think it's weird and they throw you out anyway. So yeah, I learned, like, no, let's just go and see what happens. But the guy, we were really lucky. There was the security guy. He was like witnessing us from the beginning on, and he was very nice.
Yeah.
The first time he came over to Jojo, I mean, we also, the video shows everything in a different, like, we did the thing with the jacket actually in the end, because it's the most causing most attention, so we decided to do this in the end. So he already came a bit earlier and said, what did he say?
he was like, "Is this?" Probably I should not say what exactly he said, but he was asking what is this for,
Yeah.
and but he was very cool. And the second time he came, he was like very experimental. He said, "I like that," but the people around are getting a bit like yeah, they're getting a bit annoyed, and so could you please
Yeah.
stop?
Or
He
yeah,
was super nice, yeah.
yeah, and this was the moment when I was on the floor, and in some point I became a bit more quiet and I leaned back, and this was the moment actually that the security came to Jojo and said, yeah, this, I understand it's very experimental, but people are getting confused about this. And in this moment I went very slow and I went up and I showed the heart to the security to like show kind of, yeah, respect and like thank you to this person. And then we were like, okay, we stop, and I got a soda. Went to get a soda for the security, and we left.
Yeah, but I also like that you thought it was in Wien Mitte, because Sunny did this research before, and it was in Berlin. It was a mall in Berlin, but she sent me all these malls, and I couldn't. I had no idea where the one was stopping and the next was starting, so I had no clue as well. It was, yeah.
Mm. So I think it's also nice not to say where it is, because yeah, it could be
Yeah.
everywhere. Of course, if you want to find out, you have to like do some detective.
I read they said like what was it? You look beautiful in Berlin once you're beauty or something like that. It says on one of the
Yeah.
glass shops.
Oh.
I just remembered, speaking of the security guard, and an anecdote like many years ago when I was a very young curator. I worked with an artist who did this performance near a Dizengoff Center Mall, which is like a mall in Israel. So she did it right outside the mall, and it was relating. There was a situation with maybe I must remembers which year it was, because it's like this famous settler protest that like some land was returned and the settlers were protesting against like being evacuated, and they had this like symbol of their protest, which was the color orange for some reason. I can't remember when it was, like within all the timeline of the conflicts in Israel, but it was like this orange thing, and it was really associated with them. And she wanted to respond to it in a non-didactic way, but like to kind of expose the symbolic level of protest, and to try and interfere the everyday life. So she had these like orange strings, and she was wearing this gorilla mask, speaking of masks, and she was trying to block the road with the cars with the orange strings. So she was like going from one side of the road to the other and putting this like cardboard boxes and then trying to put the strings, and then the cars of course continued to go and they like took the strings with them. So it wasn't a real interruption, it was a symbolic interruption. But then police came and they got really aggregated because they recognized the color orange as relating to the settlers, and they became really upset, and they were like, is this a political protest? It's like terrorism, it's causing interruptions in the for the people, it's dangerous for the people, and then I came to them and I said, it's just art. And I don't know even why I said that, it was just an instinct. And then like the guy was talking to his chief of the police, he was like, it's just art, step down, it's just art, step down. and then everybody like, there was this collective sigh of relief. And then he said, okay, but you need to stop now and clear out all the garbage because it's really like not nice. So this like it's just art sort of thing, even though it was what it was, like in between art and political protest and some sort of like symbolic reflection. But for them there was a differentiation between art, which was harmless, and political protest, which was dangerous. But I actually think that to date would have been different. I mean, especially in Israel, they probably would have thought it was dangerous anyway, but that was like many years ago. But another thing that I wanted to maybe talk about before we need to finish, unless there are more questions, is about the mask, because we spoke about the mask before, but now we have an extra level with the COVID mask. So I thought that was really like interesting because it's also a way of having a performative persona, but on the other hand, it looks like a natural thing because everybody have it now.
Yeah, I'm actually a bit happy with this because yeah, then I can still hide my face and have this protection. But I don't like need to have like a hooligan mask in order to do so. So I think it benefits my work.
So you kind of blend in more because with the hooligan mask, it's the performative aspect is more present.
Yes, yes. So I found this quality very interesting because then you can, what also in this, I mean, in what we did in the mall, like some aspect that I found very interesting is this imitation of unconsciousness. Like when I had the headphones, like singing along and like kind of performing an unconsciousness, but actually I'm very conscious, but still like in a way also becoming unconscious by tricking myself into it. And if I would wear a mask, then people would like never perceive me as unconscious. So yeah, but as a choice of doing this.
Yeah, it's also different. I mean, in the collective performances that you showed earlier, there's a very um, distinct presence of like something that is intent. And when it's only you, then you could really like move on this line between an accident, an intention, a performance, and an everyday behavior.
Or a fashion show.
Or a fashion show. Or a video clip production.
Yeah.
Any more questions from anyone? Anything else that you want to say, Jojo or Sunny? Okay, so thank you very much. And maybe if you like, you could also send us the video itself, like the file, and we will upload it like in separate from the conversation, and then we can also share it a bit more. And I hope you enjoyed the experience. I really enjoyed it. And thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks again to the Austrian Cultural Forum for supporting us very generously and for an ongoing dialogue.
Thank you.
Bye bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.